Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say, bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful May the 6th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we have another day of trying to run down this COVID pandemic. We have another day of confusion in the White House and almost 2 months without live sports in America.
Oh.
But first and foremost, I'd like to say thank you to all the frontline healthcare workers for the marvelous job that you do every day in trying to keep Americans safe.
They are definitely doing their job to keep America safe, but sometimes we're just not listening, Big C. We're not listening at all. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. And also, I want to say Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you gotta have a smart TV. You'll just be staring at a still picture. It's all fair, love, and war. Want to make sure we give out our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones get some help. And Big C, maybe it's my reticular activating system, but I've been hearing this message given out by so many other radio stations all over the universe, Big C. Why is it so important to you?
Well, it's a needy message given out by every media outlet, Charlton, that we need to constantly think about our great veterans that have served this country so admirably. And even in these pandemic times that we're having, our veterans have always suffered, Charlton. They even suffer during these times. We need to find a way to get them that National Suicide Prevention Hotline number. Unfortunately, this country loses some 19 veterans a day to suicide, a horrific disease, Charlton, that has always been in existence. Not only our veterans, but our young people also have been succumbing to this disease. So any way we can get access to this National Suicide Prevention Hotline number for our young people in America and our veterans, and I know everyone doesn't have access to a cell phone or the internet, but any way that you see, anytime that you see someone who is struggling mentally, emotionally, Charlton, that is having ill thoughts, don't hesitate in offering them this lifeline, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number.
It makes so much sense. 800-273-8255. 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and they can get some help. And like you said, Big C, it doesn't have to be the person going through it. It could be the person knowing somebody going through it. Everybody needs someone to hold their hands at some point in time in life. Very happy to be affiliated with Valley, home of weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. And when you reach out to them, tell them Big C Central. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it, just like your fast food companies. They're doing it all over the place, except for the ones that are running out of meat because COVID-19 is real. Even though a lot of people are trying to say that it's not real, we know it's real, and some people are running out of food, but you see them on TV. You know that. Sports teams are also on TV, especially in South Korea, Big C. They're on TV, and you can let TV work for you. 800-772-8624, 800-772-8624. Also, if you're online, just go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. And you can find out more about the opportunities available in real estate. So, Big C, I know you said the other day, and you know, it's funny how I tell you there are times we talk about things, and they come true. And we were talking about POTUS and how he was going to cancel or furlough his coronavirus task force. We talked about that yesterday, and I believe yesterday was Tuesday. The days always run together. Well, Big C, would you believe POTUS had a change of heart? Today he announced, one day after he said he was disband the White House Coronavirus Task Force, he now says that he will not disband it. However, he will add advisors and focus on safety to help reopen the U.S. economy. Didn't you say that's what they should have been doing yesterday, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you know, him not disbanding the coronavirus task force means very little, Charlton. It means that he's going to muzzle the coronavirus task force. He's going to limit their exposure to the American public. I mean, the cat is out of the bag about this pandemic here in the United States and the problem that it has caused to the citizens of this country and the horrific death rate that we're at. We've exceeded 78,000, I believe, today. Unfortunately, Charlton, Americans have lost their lives. And the president is constantly talking about, well, we need to open up the country. He's not looking at the excessive loss of life that it's going to create, Charlton. As the positive cases continue to rise around the country, you know, he's trying to use New York as a model, saying because New York is plateaued out. And other cases are rising across the country because of lack of testing. The president also laminated that all Americans don't need to be tested because the more Americans that you test, the more positive cases that will show up.
Yeah.
And that's not what he needs in his political theater. He needs for the cases to be low, so he is refusing to increase the testing around the United States. He wants to keep it at a minimum.
Yeah. You know, it's ironic, and I hate the fact that it seems to be true. I talked about this. It's like being Malthusian. It's a way to control populations. As people get older and they want to cut Social Security anyway, as people get older, if somehow by nature or some virus people pass on, then that's less you have to worry about. It may sound macabre, but it just seems like it's true. So in the series of tweets, he talked about, again, the task force being able to focus on safety and opening up the country again. And I just mean, to me, it doesn't mean that people who are hard hit by this virus are going to be less likely to be hard hit by the virus. Big C, it just means that, as they said with their own lips, they're willing to lose more people, and hopefully the herd mentality will kick in. And I don't know if that's the right thing, but I'm not the president. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, even as the president today, Charlton, is pushing the Supreme Court to abolish Obamacare, to overturn this 2010 law. You think about it, we are in the greatest pandemic that's ever existed in America as far as a health risk.
Yeah.
And the president is calling for the abolishment of health care in the country. And those health care is for the needy, Charlton, the less fortunate, the less financially stable people that can afford Obamacare.
Yeah.
And the president is calling for the abolishment of it. Yet there is nothing to replace it. He is hoping for the open insurance market that, you know, really lobbies for Mitch McConnell to be out there and say, okay, if you can't afford private insurance, you're going to do without. And so you think we've had a loss of life because of this pandemic of coronavirus? Think about the loss of life that we're going to have if the Supreme Court overturns Obamacare in the middle of this pandemic. People who could go in and get health care, Charlton, will no longer be able to have health care because who knows how quick they would snatch their health care away from them if they abolish Obamacare. What day would it end? The day that they abolish it and the White House has nothing to replace. Think about it. You have an Affordable Care Act insurance that people can afford, and you're saying that you can come up with something much better.
Right.
But I believe it's been 10 years since Obamacare passed, and the Republicans held the Senate and the House, and they could not come up with anything that could replace Obamacare. Trump's been in office for 3 years. He still has not come up with anything that could replace Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And so when we have Americans dying every day by the thousands in this country, and you're talking about taking away health care from private citizens, I know everybody wants to talk about sports and getting the games back played, but think about, even the NBA said today that they cannot afford to test all of the players on a daily basis because it would take some 15,000 tests if they were to start back the season from the start of the season to the end of the season. It would take some 15,000 tests to test every player every day to make sure that no one has contacted the COVID-19.
You know, it's ironic that I guess people don't really know about Obamacare anymore because it's called the Affordable Care Act for a lot of good old boys that don't read much. But I know that Congress, in POTUS and Pence, they have health care for life. They don't have to worry about if they take away anything. And again, I just want to repeat that if you have a pre-existing condition, then an insurance carrier can deny you. They can do that. And who's not going to have some form of a pre-existing condition at this time, Big C? Is just the going forward in our society. But it's all fair and love and war. Everybody has the right to look at that or not to look at it. But it's unfortunate because a lot of the times the people who need help the most are the ones who can't take care of it on their own. I wanna focus on something that happened with the NFL also. You know, we talked about yesterday with Disneyland in Shanghai is scheduled to open next week. So after Mother's Day weekend, they want some of the mothers with newborn children to take their children to Disneyland in Shanghai, and hopefully they can play with Mickey Mouse ears. That doesn't make any sense, but you know some people, they can't wait to get in line, Big C. The NFL, they've already formulated a ticket refund plan for games that are missed and games that are played without fans. Now, if you bought a ticket, of course, if you can't get in, they're going to give you your money back. But who wants to be the lucky 15,000 or so fans that they'll let you go to the game if you're at Hard Rock Stadium down in Florida where they have the Super Bowl, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, as you look at the states opening back up and if the sports arenas open back up, those fans are going to flock to those stadiums in droves. Don't think that they're going to be hesitant about going to a stadium. I mean, they're all antsy about getting out and watching somebody. They want to watch the experience of a live sporting event. There's going to be no hesitation in somebody going through a turnstile. The biggest problem that the team is going to have is limiting the number of people that come into the stadium. How do you police that? Who gets the ticket? Who does not get the ticket? Especially if you're a season ticket holder, Charlton, and some season ticket holders, you know, you look at a place like Green Bay. Everybody is a season ticket holder.
Yep.
And in Green Bay, they have bench seating. They don't have chairs. It's open benches just like in a lot of college stadiums.
Yep.
So everybody's sitting elbow to elbow. They're not even separated by an armrest. But who do you let in and who do you keep out? That is the biggest problem that teams are going to face. You're going to call people or you're going to stand outside, no, you come in, no, you can't come in. It's going to be a catastrophic thing, Charlton, once these venues open back up.
Yeah.
But it comes down to the players, and I know a lot of players are going to say, I need to play because I need the money, and all health concerns aside. That's what it comes down to. And this is the reason why we don't see Major League Baseball playing today, because they have the greatest union in all the sports.
Yeah.
And the players in Major League Baseball are not antsy about getting back out there, even though with the model that's going on in South Korea.
Yeah.
They don't care about that. They care about their livelihoods. Their union takes care of them.
Yeah.
And they don't want to put their health concerns out there, Charlton, worried about making a few more dollars.
Well, it's funny. I was telling you, there's a TV show on HBO. It's called Ballers. It has Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and they had a character in it by the name of Big C, and he's driving a big Cadillac Escalade like yours. And I said, Big C's making TV, and he's not even letting me know about it. But they had a character by the name of Big C. And the funny part, Big C, is they had all the owners sitting around a big conference table. They were in Los Angeles. And one guy in the introduction, it lasted about 5 seconds. They said, is this the guy going to talk about how Jesus is black? I don't want to hear that stuff either. And I guess The Rock pointed to Revelation chapter 1, verses 14 and 15, where Christ had skin the color of brass. And I bring that up because in that show called Ballers, Big C, and they had the character Big C in there, they were talking about adding these 17 games and whether they give refunds or not. In the show Ballers on HBO, they talked about adding the 17 game, and a character by the name of Big C works for the LA Rams, okay? So the NFL, if it plays 17 games without fans in the seats, Big C, butts in the seat, would you believe they stand to lose about $3.2 billion, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's realistic. You have to understand how much money these team owners make from everything that's pertaining to game day shopping. From the parking lot, from the concessions, from all the paraphernalia that's sold, from the seat sales, the personal seat license. That is a lot of money times 17. And when you're looking at that, you know, throughout the season, and you talk about $3.2 billion being lost off of the revenue of the owners, that's a trickle-down effect to the players. because the owners are not making the revenue, and this was the big reason that they were trying to get this collective bargaining deal done, because it was based on revenue and escalating revenue, and the TV deal was expiring this year.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to get the deal done now so that the players could not dip into that new TV money from the 2021 season.
Yeah.
And that's what the owner's concern was. But to play games without fans, I don't think that the NFL players want to play games without fans.
Well, no, they don't. But how many parents are going to take their kids to Disneyland Shanghai just because the country says, hey, it's open. You can come in and play and ride the roller coaster. Same thing. You got to go through the turnstiles at Disneyland. You got to go through the turnstiles at an NFL game to get in. They're going to make...
Well, all you have to do is look at Cinco de Mayo today, Charlton. Look at your local news.
Yeah.
And look at the catastrophic numbers of people that were out on the streets in venues
yesterday
without mask on, not practicing social distancing. So, you know, when you open up an amusement park, I don't care whether it's in Shanghai, whether it's in Los Angeles, whether it's in Florida, people are going to show up. They just are. It's human nature to go against the curve. It honestly is. And when you have an administration talking about they're on top of this and the numbers are down instead of reporting factual numbers and telling where the new hotspots are in America, then you're jeopardizing the health of America.
Yeah, but health is not always important, Big C. Thinking about the NFL and how much money they'll lose without fans, last year, or 2019, they shared $8.780 billion among 32 teams. That's $274.3 million each. $274.3 million each is a lot of money. That's what each team got, Big C, for being a part of the NFL. And the revenue they're expecting to make that expand. I don't know if that's going to happen with the coronavirus and all the issues that it creates, but I'm sure as we get back on track and as we get POTUS, remember, POTUS called that meeting together with the NFL owners, and it's an NBA, it was also NHL, and of course all the major sports league. POTUS asked the sports people to go back to work, and you know he wants to be able to give them the signature on the dotted line to say, yes, let's start playing sports, but he won't give the same type of attention to passing or keeping Obamacare and trying to make that better. It's all fair and love and war. If the NFL loses the revenue this season alone, the salary cap for players next year, believe it or not, is going to be reduced by at least $30 million per team. Big C, your thoughts?
And that's a lot of money. So when you think about a lot of these big contracts that are being signed by these free agents, Charlton, and the highest paid players on the team, they're going to have to go in and do some restructuring of contracts. Because when you think about some of these quarterbacks where their contract is counting anywhere between $35 to $40 million against the salary cap, and then you have a reduction on the cap of $300 million, you got to go in and start restructuring the top 5 contracts on every team just to be able to keep a roster going, Charles. Because you think about 60% of the roster is minimum wage salary of players. So, I mean, think about if you're trying to play these games without fans, butts in the seats, and they can only watch on television. Does the NFL raise the price of commercials just like they do during the Super Bowl because you can't attend the stadium, so we're going to gouge you more, you know, as an advertiser?
They may
put the product on television.
Yeah, they may just. I didn't even think about that. They may just do that because now you'll have more people watching either at home or watching on the device. So that's a good point. I'm sure they'll say thank you for bringing that up, Big C, and maybe they'll put that on the Ballers Rock, a special on HBO also, how they'll raise ticket prices if people can't go to the games. But I know they'll figure out a way, just like they did it in South Korea. They're gonna have sports, and they're gonna have people do it. You're gonna see people at Disneyland in Shanghai. You know you're gonna do it because right now they have people protesting at state capitals. And one lady in Texas was jailed. Of course, it would be the state of Texas, Big C. They sent a lady to jail for wanting to work. I think she had some type of a barber shop, and she opened it, and she got the $7,000 fine and a week in jail. And when she spoke to the judge, she said, I can't feed my family. I'm starving to death. And everybody thinks they can apply for unemployment, and they get put on hold. And so this lady went to jail because he went to work against the state orders. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's a Republican state. She's a Republican. But the Attorney General came out and paid the fine for the lady today. But think about the the brachiosis of this woman, where the judge offered her an out in the situation.
She was
All
Caucasian.
she had to do was apologize and say that she was being arrogant against the state law. She was so cocky that she would not do that, Charlton. So I don't blame the judge. When the judge offers you a get-out-of-jail pass,
Yeah.
and you say, no, stick it up your whatever, And so
Wow.
he was correct
Yeah.
in putting the sentence and fine in
Yeah.
on her.
Yeah.
I don't know many people that when you go stand in front of a judge, if you just tell
No.
the judge that you were wrong
Right.
and you can go home,
Yeah.
won't do that.
Yeah.
But that shows the arrogance of the woman. The law stated that she could open up on Friday. She
Yeah.
said, no, she's going to do it on her own terms.
Yeah.
So she was taking the law in her hands, so the judge was correct.
Yeah, the judge was correct. I wish they would treat the same. I knew that. So you said someone paid off the fine, the $7,000, but they had the attorneys general that did that.
The attorney general did.
Well, I wish they would do that for a lot of African Americans who are falsely jailed for maybe whatever minute reason, but I don't know. Maybe it's just a skin bag test that she passed.
Well, I mean, if you look at how law enforcement has treated people of color during
Yeah.
this pandemic, when they talk about being out in public practicing social distance,
Yeah.
Charlton, you can see it on many news outlets where law enforcement has been arresting minority people of color
Yep.
for walking around not practicing social distancing or not wearing masks.
Yeah.
But you can also flip the page and you can see people who look like those law enforcement, white mainstream Americans, not practicing social distances, standing next to each other, sitting in parks, sitting in restaurants, protesting, and no law enforcement has stepped in and arrested any of those.
We know. I've seen even on television and I've seen in media, there were some group of they were Caucasian people. They were white, and they actually were walking around with guns, and they weren't being arrested. They weren't being choked out or thrown to the ground. None of that was happening. And it's like the Dylan Booth when he shot up the church, the black church, and I think he murdered 9 people, and the police took him to a hamburger joint before they took him to jail. But that's called white skin privilege, and it's happening, and it happens too much. And I like just shouting that down, but it's sometimes it's like throwing a pebble in the ocean. It doesn't really make much of a splash. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's factual. Like I said, I watched police on news coverage passing out masks to white citizens and holding black citizens down on the sidewalk with their knee in their back, putting handcuffs on them for not wearing a mask and not practicing social distance.
Yeah, I guess they're trying to make America great again. We've heard that before, Big C. Speaking of trying to make people great again, you look at the Cincinnati Bengals. I want to ask you, if you look at the NFL, you have quarterback Joe Burrow. If he wins 50 games in his first 5 years as a starter for the Cincinnati Bengals, which probably won't happen, that would be quite successful. But who would that remind you of, if a player that's won 50 games in his first 5 years in the NFL? Big C, your thoughts?
Ironically, it would remind me of Andy Dalton, the quarterback that they just released.
Yeah.
Andy Dalton, in his first 5 years as a quarterback with the Cincinnati Bengals, won 50 games.
Yeah.
Think about that, 50 games, and they're saying that he was a flop. He won 50 games. He went to the playoffs 4 of those 5 years, Charles. 4 of his first 5 years, they went to the playoffs. So, and you replace him with a guy saying that he's going to be better than that. And so that's the benchmark in Cincinnati right now for Joe Burrow,
Yeah.
is to be able to emulate what Andy Dalton did in the first 5 years that he was with the Cincinnati Bengals. Take the Cincinnati Bengals to the playoffs 4 out of 5 years and win 50 games.
Yeah, and I think Russell Wilson's also someone who did that. In fact, that's a great stat by Andy Dalton, but I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll with the Seattle Seahawks, they are 56-0 when leading by 4 points or more at halftime. That's an incredible stat in the world of the NFL. We know that everybody is trying to figure out how to get more games, who's going to be the starter of a team, and everybody's looking forward to that. I know if you think about this, and we talked about it somewhat yesterday, and it's just amazing how we had the conversation yesterday about the Big Ten Conference, how they want to make sure they deal with people in their emotional health. They want to get them some counseling and so many other things they want to do to make sure that people are healthy before they go back to school. So when you think about this, in returning back to school, if student athletes on the field, that the president's made it the comment that the most vulnerable part of American society is your many teachers. A lot of them have tenure and they're above 60 years old, you would say, and that they should stay at home. So if they're staying at home, and most of them are above 60 years old, then how are classes going to be taught, Big C? Your thoughts?
I mean, and that starts at the youth level, Charlton. When you start looking at some of these lifetime tenured teachers from kindergarten on up.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in high school, and that was ancient times ago, we had many teachers that were over 60 years of age, Charlton, that were teaching classes. And I know that hasn't changed because when teachers get in, they make it a career. They're 30 to 40 years in doing that job. So they constantly exceed the age of 60. So every level of education that we look at in America, you're going to be dealing with the elderly. And these elderly are not going to be practicing social distance, Charlton. They're going to be in a classroom that's constantly evolving with different bodies coming in and out. And when you think about some of these college classes, Charlton, when you have hundreds of students who walk in, they can't practice social distancing. I know most of the profs are a little bit away, but you're in that same environment where you're breathing the same air over and over.
Yeah.
And so how do you protect these teachers, Charlton, from not contacting or spreading this COVID-19 to their class that they're going to be teaching? And when you have several classes throughout the day, think about the number of bodies that are being exposed to each other.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a choice to make, Big C, and if you're an educator and you have to go to work, I mean, if you have issues or not, if you have a fever, but the thing is, sometimes it's asymptomatic. People don't know they have it. But I know it's something that everybody has to think about. If you juxtapose that to teachers, most athletes, they're used to working out together. They work out in groups. During the coronavirus pandemic, a lot of people are not working out with other people. But how will athletes be in peak condition if they have to return on short notice? That's important. And, you got to work out as a group, Big C. They don't have you do your private workout. So even if they allow people back, they're allowing, even with the president saying it himself, they know that more people are going to get sick, but they can't concern themselves with that because it's costing them the most important thing to them, and that's money, Big C. Your thoughts?
And that's when the president put a cost on life today when he spoke, and the irresponsibility coming out of the Oval Office, Charlton, about the lack of concern and empathy towards human life in America and around the world. He could care less about how many more people fall ill to this pandemic or even lose their life, Charlton. He's more concerned about how much money he can make for himself and his cronies, in the economic part of America. I don't know if he understands that the loss of life is an economic loss also, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
And how it devastates people in America and families, what they're going to lose out of these situations. But when you were talking about athletes, I know throughout my career, I always worked out, with a workout partner or two, and we've always worked out in large facilities that had a copious amount of people inside, Charlton, and all of these people were breathing heavily, sweating.
Yeah.
Temperatures up in the room. You could smell the testosterone in the air and everything. So, how do athletes protect themselves? And you think about nowadays, a lot of athletes have personal trainers that go to academies where they work out in groups, Charlton, where they hire people to keep them in peak physical condition because everybody can't afford to have their own gym at home. And so when they come in, like you said, what type of condition are they going to be in?
Yeah, and even, let's just be candid. If you're going to have a lot of these young people getting together, most people, when they go to college, that's when they meet someone, they start dating, and they start interacting, and especially fraternities and sororities, and that's where a lot of people learn to interact with other people. Now, if we're going to oftentimes, you have campuses that have between 30 and 50,000 students. Some even have more than that. Then it could be
help. Think about the dining common, Charlton, and the student union on campus.
Yeah.
When people go to those things, the rec centers on campus. Are you going to make all these facilities, out of bounds that students can't go to them? And when they talk about gatherings of 10, how are you going to get just 10 students into the dining common? How are you going to get 10 students into the study hall, even the library, or even the rec center on a campus?
Yeah, well, the president said we can't shut this thing down for 5 years. They know you got to lose somebody, just like in war. He said they're willing to lose people, but they gotta get that money, Big C. We're gonna take the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, and when we come back, we're gonna ask you again, what's more important, your health or your money? I think we found out the answer. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on two apps that I love called Google. Or Alexa, just say Google. Or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV or you'll be looking at a still picture. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. And when you reach out to them, let them know Big C sent you. Also, if you realize how important it is for TV, McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, even your sports teams do it, and you can do it too. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. And you can have the chance to watch TV work for your real estate too. It's so important. Also, for those of you looking for opportunities in work, BigCSports.pacwm.com. That's BigCSports.pacwm, and understand more about what's going on in the world of real estate opportunities. Really appreciate that. I want to get right back, Big C, to what we were talking about in sports and health. Again, we talked about at the top of the hour, one day after POTUS said that he would disband the White House coronavirus task force, that they said now they're not going to disband it. However, they will add advisors to focus on safety and to help get the United States economy open again. So like the woman down in Texas, you have the state attorneys general paying their fine. I think that everybody that's ever had any kind of fine imposed on them, call your state attorneys general and see if he'll pay your fine too, because it happened to a Caucasian woman in Texas. But again, it's all fair and love and war. You have any fines you need paid, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, no, I'm pretty good now, Charles, and I've been out of the public eye for a little while, so yeah. I've been dodging all of that.
Yeah, that's called white skin privilege, Big C. You see it live on the Big C Sports Show. The Attorney General paid the fine of a white woman who broke the law. And then, does that make any sense? She broke the law and he paid her fine, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, maybe they were related to each other, Charles, but he did probably get the Attorney General of the state of Texas.
Yeah.
Stepped in, paid the $7,000 fine, so the lady could go home.
She got what's called the Big T hookup, in Texas. NFL quarterback Brett Favre, he's paid the money back, but he received over $1.1 million in payments for speeches that he did not give. The money came from some sort of a welfare scheme that they had down in Mississippi, of all states, Big C. And there's a lot of people that have been looked into, and some have been indicted. There's about $94 million of questionable spending. Favre was not accused. He did pay back the $1.1 million, but that's supposed to be for people that need public assistance. And we always talk about, where did that money go? The $6.2 trillion bill that was passed, I think the first $2 trillion was given out. I don't know anybody that's gotten some money. I know some corporations that said they got some money. But do you understand? Brett Favre at least did the right thing to pay it back. But there's a lot of people that get money from poor people and they give it to rich guys, and no one has an accountability for it. The money wasn't paid back until the group was indicted. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, all you have to do is start with the current administration right now in Washington. When you look at the task force that Jared Kushner put together with all his friends and cronies to handle the distribution of medical equipment that was supposed to be coming out of the White House through this WAR Act.
Yeah.
And states and hospitals and other public and health agencies have not been able to get it.
No.
But they paying these people, and they have no logistics background.
Yeah, they have. I mean, but he said those PPPs are ours, and maybe he meant that was the same part with that coronavirus stimulus package too. I mean, it's amazing how the skin privilege is really alive and well. He said, "Make America Great Again." I guess he knew what he was talking about, as well as his family members. I want to say happy birthday. Big C, to the Say Hey kid. I would say Willie Mays just turned 89 years old. Really love the Say Hey kid, what he's meant not only to baseball but San Franciscans, and that young man, 89 years young, really wishing him nothing but the best of health, wealth, and happiness. When it comes to longevity, Big C, as a Major League Baseball player, we think about guys like Curt Flood, Big C. It's hard to beat the Say Hey kid, Willie Mays. Hall of Famer outfielder, won Rookie of the Year honors, in 1951 and played in the World Series in 1973. And I don't believe he ever had any of his fines paid down in Texas. Basically, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the contributions of the great Willie Mays to the sport of baseball, not only that, Charlton, but to American society. From 1952 to 1953, he served in Korean War over in Korea. So not only did he do his time and duty as a great athlete in America, but he also did his public service as a military man. And my dad was over in Korea during that same time that Willie Mays was over there, but he came back from the war, Charlton, and rekindled his baseball career, as many other great Americans did at that time, and became one of the most historical, greatest baseball players of all time. 24 All-Star appearances during his career. Just a phenomenal person.
Amazing. Over 25 seasons in the majors. He had 3,055 hits, 2,190 walks, second most all times. He was good for a 401 on-base percentage. And think about this. It's amazing that he's still an ambassador to baseball. Very lucid gentleman at 89 years old, seen all the good and bad, the integration of baseball. We saw that with Branch Rickey, and he saw that. And it's just amazing, and I just want to wish him a happy birthday. I know that he's been such an ambassador to the world of baseball. I wish that more people like Willie Mays would be more honored and maybe have Willie Mays Day. I know we have so many days for different people. We have Lou Gehrig. We have all those things. It would be nice if Major League Baseball would put something together called Willie Mays Day, and that would be a nice birthday present. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, there's so many days set aside for so many great players that have contributed to this game over the decades, Charlton, and he's just one of many.
Yep.
I mean, most cities do it for certain, honored players that have played in those cities for most of their lifetime.
Yeah.
It's hard to do it for every great player in baseball because now you got to walk through the Hall of Fame and say who's eligible and who's not.
Yeah, I would still love to see Willie Mays Day, Big C. It's one day out of the year, and I think it would be a nice gesture. But we'll see what happens in the baseball universe. Happy birthday, Willie Mays, maybe one of the best baseball players in the universe. Really appreciate saying happy birthday to Willie Mays. I want to jump down to the world of college football, Big C. College football spread across the 48 states. The FBS college football, I think the May struggles, we can see it happening right now. In all 10 conferences, if they start at the same time, there's a significant chance that the 2020 season begins without conference play. And conferences would have a difficulty starting together, either because the states are individual colleges, they take different approaches to Division I football, and they don't even care about working together. It's about the guys at the top saying, we don't need the bottom feeders. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's not about the bottom feeders. I mean, you think about if all states are not open fully during those times, and we've talked about universities not being open, Charlton. If you can't get the student body on campus, last I checked, I think the athletes are part of the student body also.
Yeah.
They're not university employees, so you cannot bring them on campus without bringing the rest of the student body on. So this is something that they're splitting hairs on right now as states fight to reopen and reopen fully. You have to open up all educational institutions, not just the universities, Charlton. You have to start with the grammar schools and the high schools. They have to be allowed to be open. As we talked about the elderly, instructors in all of these levels of institutions, Charlton, all the teachers that are up above the age of 60, and the president said maybe they should stay at home. If there's a shortage of teachers and you cannot open up these classes fully, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I think they've already practiced that by having some online. They'll figure it out. They have online school, and they have that right now for high school and even colleges. They'll figure something out. But I want to ask you, since we're on college football, think about who are the top 5 college coaches that are next in line to potentially capture their first college football national championship. You have James Franklin, Penn State, Kirby Smart with Georgia, Dan Mullen, Florida, Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma. You have Ryan Day, Ohio State. There's Mario Cristobal of Oregon. I also want to add Clay Helton of USC. They had 17 returning starters this year. So if they have Disneyland open in Shanghai, they'll probably kick off college football too. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think when you look out there on the West Coast, one of those teams will eliminate each other, Charlton, when you talk about USC and Oregon. And I like the advantage that Oregon has. They've had more of a consistent run with their program out there. But when you talk about that mainstay of coaches, Unlike Lincoln Riley has had a bite at the apple the last couple of years when you think about what he's done. 3 years in a row, he has had a run into the college football playoffs. And this is going to be the first time that he's going to be coaching Charlton. He has the potential of having a quarterback that he'll have more than 1 year.
Yeah.
He had Baker Mayfield. He had Kyler Murray. He had the kid that just was drafted by the Eagles.
Jalen Hurts.
And so he's only had him for 1 year, Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Now he has a kid named Spencer Rattler, who's a better quarterback than all three of those quarterbacks that I just mentioned, Charlton. Yeah. He'll be a sophomore, if not just a redshirt freshman, at the University of Oklahoma this year. He was one of the top 3 quarterbacks coming out of high school 2 years ago. But this kid can spin the ball, and I think within the next 3 years, Lincoln Riley will win a national championship at Oklahoma.
Man, they've been saying that for a long time, Big C. I remember Oklahoma. They've been knocked around in the BCS, or this new Final Four series, in the Bowl Championship Series. I saw them play against USC. They lost 55-19 down in the Orange Bowl. That's going back to 2004. They also lost to Florida. I think that was 24-14. They've always been a team that was put high up in the rankings. I think the most successful and dominant team that I've seen with Oklahoma over the years would go back to Barry Switzer when they beat Penn State 25-10 down in the Orange Bowl many moons ago. So even if they get in, they seem to find a way to get knocked around by more physical teams. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's not even about being physical anymore. If you think about those teams that you talked about, all of those teams, Charlton, had quarterbacks that spent more than 1 year. And just like I said, Lincoln Riley's had 3 consecutive runs to the national championship playoffs, Charlton. 3 consecutive runs.
Yeah.
But every time he had a 1 year quarterback. And that's been the difference, having a quarterback that's only been around for 1 year. And if you look at the second half in all of those games, well, the first half in the game that they played with Baker Mayfield, they dominated against Georgia. But in the second half with Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts, they won the second half of the games that they played.
Yeah.
What they need is a quarterback with some time behind him, Charlton. And Spencer Rattler, like I said, this will be his first year as a starter. He'll either be a freshman or a redshirt sophomore, Charlton. But in 2 years, Spencer Rattler will lead Oklahoma to a national championship.
That's interesting. I want to focus on in the next several minutes. I want to focus on some of the potential. If Disneyland is Shanghai can open, maybe they'll find a way to trot out some people and play college football. But some of the marquee games coming up this year, think about this. Ohio State is scheduled to be at Oregon September 12th, the defending Big Ten champion versus the defending Pac-12 champion. You have LSU. They will host Alabama November 2nd. That's a rare revenge game for Alabama. Normally, they are always coming off of a already beaten team. Florida versus Georgia, October 31st. That's in Jacksonville. The Bulldogs, they've ruled the SEC East the last few years. Florida's closing that gap. And then you have Georgia at Alabama, September 19th. The big game, in my opinion, you have Texas at LSU, September 12th. Sam Ehlinger and the Longhorns, they could not keep up with them last year. But could they? I mean, they kept pace with them. They just could not score them. They'll get a chance to return the favor this year. Ohio State at Penn State, October 24th. That's Happy Valley. You have LSU at Florida, October 10th. That's down in the swamp. It's always hard to win there. Auburn at Georgia, October the 10th. The big game that I want to see that you and I at least got to bet. We got to bet something. Maybe I'll bet you some California red wine against some of that Southern boy moonshine that you guys are good for. Alabama versus USC, September 5th down in Texas. And Alabama's trying to set the tone again to get back to the finals. And then USC is trying to get on track the way they were back under the days of Pete Carroll. But the final big game, Big C, Clemson at Notre Dame, November 7th. Playoff implications in South Bend. And remember, the Notre Dame athletic director said, we're going to play football no matter what everybody else does. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's wishful thinking on all of those college football games. We know it's all on hold until the institutions decide to open up. That's the key point. If they decide to open up, and if they don't open up on time, Charlton, and the start of the season is moved back, how many of those games will be scrapped? I mean, these are the things you got to look at. There's going to be flexibility on some of these dates. Nothing's going to be etched in stone until the season kicks off on time. Yeah,
and then also I'd be remiss if I did not mention the big Michigan at Ohio State game scheduled for November 28th. The only thing is, can Michigan hold Ohio State to 50 points or less? Jim Harbaugh probably doesn't care. He's getting paid anyway. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, Jim Harbaugh has never beaten Ohio State since he's been there. He came close in 2014, but a bum call by the officials on fourth down, and they gave Ohio State the first down, and that was his best chance to win against them.
That was his best chance to win against them, Big C. I want to go in another sport that we call football. I heard some good old boys talking about some of the same, things that we talked about over the last couple of days about sports all over the world, not just in the United States. But Major League Soccer, they've allowed players to return to the team's facilities and start training as long as they practice social distancing, no more than 6 players on the field at a time. And as macabre as it sounds, it's just like going into war. You're expecting to lose some people. Not everybody's going to come home from war. That's why POTUS had those 5 deferments, because he wanted to make sure he's going to get home. You guarantee that by not going to Big C. But it's going to happen. They're just saying we got to figure out how to make sure that we have people who are going to get the health care that they need when something happens to them. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's just like the president saying testing all Americans is not essential.
Yeah.
Because if you test, then you're going to show the collateral damage that you're going to have. You'd rather leave it up to speculation and just watch the numbers rise. But if you test people and you show that the numbers of positive cases, Charlton, then it shows that we have a real problem bigger than what's been shown. And, when you look at the MLS soccer coming back and saying that, okay, we can have 6 players at the facility, I don't know the last time somebody looked at the size of a soccer field, Charlton, but it's larger than a football field.
Yeah.
So you talk about social distancing. You can't have any interaction on the size of a soccer field. You might kick the ball, it's got to roll 30, 40 yards to the next person. So you will have distancing, but how do you get your coordination and timing down together, Charlton? That's going to be the biggest problem.
In California, you got to sign a waiver if you want to go into someone's house, if you want to buy a house. You got to sign a waiver that you're not going to sue people or hold them accountable if you contact the coronavirus. They don't know where people get it, but they know how to figure it out.
That's what Mitch McConnell is trying to do right now, Charlton. Yeah. He is trying to get legislation passed that if you go back to work, is that you cannot sue your employer if you contact the COVID disease, Charlton. He's fighting for the insurance companies and the business companies, Charlton, so that you cannot sue your employer. If you go back to work, and when we think about the people who are going to be in most contact, people who are minority people, Charlton.
Yeah.
So he doesn't want those people to be able to protect themselves in going back to work when they're forced to go back to work if they contact COVID-19.
Well, civil rights was passed back in July 2nd, 1964, and it prohibited people from not being able to sue their employer for wrongful behavior. So Mitch McConnell understands that, but people got to understand the Civil Rights Act protects them. You can sue your employer, and I don't think any attorney general is going to let that go through. But maybe I'm wrong, BC. They've already let it happen in Willow State.
You got to look at the administration and the times that we're in, Charlton. They are not doing things for the American public. If you look at the number of bills and laws that the president have overturned and signed executive orders against, Charlton, this is something that he will do. And if Mitch McConnell thinks that it will help Trump get reelected, then this is something that will pass, and the president will sign it. So you think about him forcing people to go back to work, that he's opening up these states as the health crisis still increases. There's been no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
We have the death rate that has exceeded 73,000 American citizens.
Wow.
And we have over 1.3 Americans that have tested positive. And we've only tested 4% of the population, 4 million people, not 4% of the population, 4 million people. So when you think about the 22% of the people that have been tested have come up positive for this COVID disease, Charlton, and about 8% have lost their lives. So you don't want to test more people. You don't want more American citizens being alerted to this disease. You would rather go out and throw tinfoil out there and deflect from really what the problem is in America.
Yeah, it's a lot like telling people don't have your high blood pressure checked. Just trust that it's going to be okay. It's kind of a laissez-faire attitude they're turning to. I want to just focus on something before we close out today, Big C. There's some findings against Kevin Ollie, I guess former UConn coach. He was sanctioned, and for, 3 years for a lack of institutional control. UConn stands to get 2 years probation, and they won the 2015 Men's National Basketball Championship. Maybe he can go to Texas and get the state's attorney general to pay his fine, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the NCAA upholding that against Kevin Ollie, he won an NCAA title. He's the last African-American coach to win an NCAA title.
Yeah.
But if you look at what has occurred in college basketball over the last 2 years, look at Will Wade at LSU,
Yeah.
Bill Self at Kansas, John Miller at Arizona. where they had been suspended by the NCAA and their institutions, Charlton, not being able to coach for lack of institutional control, and yet they get reinserted. But Kevin Ali goes and wins the NCAA men's title at his alma mater, but just so happens that he happens to be an African-American man, and the NCAA upholds the sanctions against him, and the other guys are able to coach freely and stay under contract.
Well, maybe he needs the state's attorney general from Texas to help him out. Well, no, he's white. Is he black or white? You say he's black, right, Big C?
Kevin Ali is an African-American man.
Just want the universe to hear that, so they're probably not going to help him out, Big C. I want to close up by saying you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on 2 apps that I love called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear, welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic. From 3,000 miles away, he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over. The universe really happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. When you reach out to them, let them know Big C sent you. Real estate brokers can put their property listings on TV just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it, and sports teams do it too. You can do it too. 800-772-8624, 800-772-8624. If you're also looking for work opportunities, BigCSports.pacwm.com. That's BigCSports.pacwm.com, and find out opportunities in lending. Really looking forward to that. Big C, would you believe that the Olympics, the World Anti-Doping Agency, they're looking for more funding to crack down on cheating athletes? Okay, most people are looking for money to get more PPEs and testing for COVID-19 to save lives. Why is the Olympic Committee looking for more money to crack down on athletes that cheat with performance-enhancing substances? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it makes no sense, Charlton. There's not going to be an Olympics, and you need to be seeking funding, as you say, for COVID. And you're worried about athletes that you know are doping. I mean, it's no rocket science to know who is and who has not been doping, Charlton, from the Olympic athletes.
If they come to work with a needle in the backside, or they've gained 50 pounds of muscles in 2 weeks, Big C, sometimes that means they're already doing something dirty. With a budget of around $36 million in 2019, they're still looking for more money as the world is trying to deal with COVID. But everybody's going to do what they feel is best in their own mind. And if you're an athlete, like I've heard before from many professional athletes, say, Charlton, if I go get a regular job, I might make $50,000. If I take the whatever I got to take or rub on my arms, then maybe they can sign a contract for between $3 to $20 million a year. And sometimes those are easier choices to make. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, it's always been an easy choice, Charlton. I've dealt with many teammates and friends over the years that have decided to go that route. I mean, people have always tried to get an advantage.
Yeah.
It's a very elite fraternity to be a professional athlete. And so a lot of guys understand that what they need to do to get that advantage. It's been going on since the 70s.
Yeah, it has been going on. And no matter what it is, POTUS wants to keep the coronavirus task force in hand, but he wants to make a U-turn. He wants to focus on getting the economy back to work and making people go back to work, even if they're not safe. And McConnell saying he doesn't want you to be able to sue your employer if you get sick on the premises of the employer. Doesn't make any sense. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, I want to say a good job to the president yesterday for not being a good sport and a team player in Arizona by not wearing a face guard while he was in the plant, Charlton. But also I want to say, once again, congratulations and thank you to all those frontline healthcare workers, Charlton, who work so tirelessly every day to keep America safe and healthy.
They are doing a very good job. We wish you nothing but the best. We wish you love, peace, and so the great Doc and niggas. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.